It's in this time. Click. Oh, it went live really fast. And we're live. It is Sunday, June 6th, 2021, 5:02 p.m. Somebody left on our Facebook comments page, or maybe in YouTube comments, somebody, exclamation mark, all caps, tell Scott Shapiro to clean his webcam lens. I have no idea if the reason Scott always looks a bit hazy is because his webcam lens is in fact dusty.
I thought it was like a persona that he cultivated.
I thought it was.
I tried to get an aura filter, but I mean, my aura is too strong.
I think it's really that Scott is just, because he's always solving a trolley problem. There's just it comes through fuzzy,
Yeah.
Look, we are out, and a word about the non-mysterious nature of our mystery guest today. I thought it was important to destroy the mystery around Deirdre's presence on the show, because so many of you had asked for her at various times, that not flagging that we were having her seemed to elevate mystery over substance. So our mystery guest was outed. We're not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to talk to Deirdre Connolly, who I think, I'm trying to remember how, I know we've never met in person, but did we just meet on Twitter? Is that
probably? Yeah,
I think so.
That's how all the good people meet.
And then she started showing up in the In Lieu of Fun audience periodically, and always had great things to say in the Greek chorus and in and sometimes on screen. And so we thought it would just be a good opportunity to have a conversation. So, Deirdre, why don't we start by just asking, how do you become a cryptographer at Zcash? I mean, when you ask the kids in middle school, what are you going to be when you grow up? Cryptographer, not the most common answer. We all have strong opinions about cryptography, but we don't actually, most people don't know a lot of cryptographers. So what's the career trajectory?
Actually, my career trajectory is probably not the default one, because I did not go to grad school or get a PhD in cryptography. That would be if someone came to me and was like, how do I do cryptography for a job? I'd be like, probably want to apply to grad school at a good school. I have to recommend MIT as good, but Stanford, Caltech, there's a great crypto program at Stanford, whatever. But I was already working in tech. I graduated from MIT in 2008. I had no crypto security experience straight out of my bachelor's. I was not interested in it at the time. I got the regular computer science stuff and math. And about 2013 or so, when someone named Snowden started leaking stuff, I was like, oh, I should get my personal operational security in order. How do I do that? Oh, you should have these keys. You should use SSH keys with these parameters. I'm like, why those parameters? Like, well, elliptic curves versus RSA. Well, what's the difference with that? And elliptic curves and security as part of my job. So I transitioned from just software engineer writing software for web services or whatever to, no, I know that this is a bad way to do this thing. Let us do it this way. Let's configure it this way, por favor. I'm aware of this attack, so on and so forth. And so I just started teaching myself and finding very good resources and books and lectures and everything that I could to teach myself on my own time, and going to conferences on my own time. And there's a very good academic conference called Real World Crypto. And that's only been around for about 3 years, 4 or 5 years now, actually. Start going to that on my own dime. Just start going to hacker conferences, academic cryptography conferences, to just network, learn more. It helped to have an academic spouse, but he does computer architecture. He does not do security or cryptography. So I was just sort of like, if I just show up at this academic conference about cryptography, is anyone gonna like look at me weird? He's like, no, just go if you want, you know, and have fun.
They'll just make jokes about dongles in front of you. Sorry.
Yeah. or
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I laugh a lot when anyone says dongles.
Yeah.
Guilty.
So long story short, I was doing it on my own and teaching myself. And then I especially got into what's usually known as post-quantum cryptography, which is theoretically, if we have a quantum computer, there's a whole bunch of cryptography that's deployed in the real world that theoretically would be broken. So people are trying to think of cryptography based on math problems that theoretically would be secure against an attacker with a very good quantum computer. And I had just learned all this cool stuff about elliptic curves, and I thought they were really cool. And then someone said, oh, they'll be broken if the quantum computers come. And I was like, I'm so sad. That's my favorite thing. They're like, well, there is a very niche new area of quantum cryptography, post-quantum cryptography that does use elliptic curves. It's called isogeny-based cryptography. But I was like, what is this? And I started getting really deep into that. And only about 10 to 20 people in the world at the time were actually doing research on it. It was a very niche new field. And I was like, I read all the papers. I would go to the conference and just be like, oh, you want to hear about this? I have it right here. Like, because there were like 24 papers at all in the entire area at the time, which was about 2015, 2016. And I started to give talks about it because I was like, this is really cool. I want to talk about it. It forces you to synthesize the information and present it. And then at some point, a person was like, oh, you write this programming language and you're really into cryptography, but you don't do it for your day job. Do you want to write cryptography and other stuff for a team of like 3 people at the Zcash Foundation? And I was like, if you want to pay me to write cryptography with the good programming language, which is called Rust, and it's like Zcash, one of the nice things about cryptocurrency is that it tends to move fast and be bleeding edge. Whereas if you were at a Google, at Amazon, or a Microsoft or whatever, the stuff they deploy is kind of battle tested and not, it's sort of like, yeah, like we know that. Like you want to deploy the boring stuff for real people, for like millions and billions of people.
But it's scalable and we know the parameters of
exactly.
problems.
It's scalable. The performance aspects have been solved. There's no surprises there. Everyone gets it. It's a solved problem. You want boring crypto for the general person. But it's a little boring. There's nothing new going on there. Whereas Zcash, we're about to deploy the 3rd version of the shielded protocol in, what year is it? In 5 years. There's new crypto happening. And they wanted to pay me to do it, and I was like, sold. And now people pay me to do cryptography and implement cryptography and analyze cryptography, and it's really awesome.
So how many, as somebody who, so I have a weirdly similar background story to this. You know, I teach at law schools. I never bothered to go to one.
Yeah.
You know, there's a kind of playing in academic circles that you actually are not qualified to play in is sort of
not trained
not formally qualified.
Yeah.
Sure, but qualified but not trained in.
Fine. I mean, I always say, you know, I've never had imposter syndrome because I'm actually an imposter. So, you know,
I kind of have the same thing, which is like, I have nothing to lose. They don't know what they don't know about me. I have nothing to lose. Just go for it.
So, but I'm curious how many in the serious cryptography world, how many people are entirely self-trained like you? How much of an oddity are you?
I'm not that odd. I had a few people in mind where I was like, I see what you did there. You do not have a PhD in cryptography, and yet you're doing interesting thing or good thing at scale or something over there or over there or over there. I knew that there were enough of them to be like, I don't think I have to go back to school to be able to do the job that I want, and I was right.
So unlike writing about law for a living, no offense to our law professors present, writing about cryptography is really hard. Because, sorry, Scott.
Wait a second. How many footnotes? Yeah, how many footnotes do you have in your papers, Deirdre? Never mind. Let's just go on. I think that's clearly false, but go ahead.
I mean, at this point, I think of cryptography as fundamentally a field of applied math with a lot of computer science application.
Yep.
But I mean, I don't know a lot of people who, who perform professionally in fields of applied math without formal training.
No, so can I just so just because my partner is a software engineer, a senior software engineer, and also has no formal training in computer science whatsoever. He was like physics and classics, and actually was like almost applied math and classics. And he's like sitting 6 feet from me, so he's hearing me talk about him. So I better get this right. But I was gonna say that. But this is one of the interesting things. One of the interesting things about following his career is that there are one of the wonderful things, I think, is that there are some very, and one of the reasons that I think libertarians tend to trend towards software and things like that sometimes is because there's a real, if you can do it, that's all you need. And there's kind of like an autonomy and liberty in that, that is unmoored from kind of classic education and class-based education and kind of credentialism that is and so interestingly, I was actually just talking to him, and had been doing a bunch of interviews for the past couple of days, and I was like, how have these interviews been going? He goes, oh, it's really funny. I have all of these people that have master's degrees in computer programming, and then I asked them to tell me what project they did out of this master's program, and it's always something that I think is no harder than something someone would have in a 2-week programming boot camp. It's just not very hard. And so it's almost as there's a whole sub story here, I guess what I'm saying, Ben, between credentialism and software, and that credentialism is catching up as a proxy for I
agree with that, but I do think cryptography is not just software engineering. It's a highly specialized field that involves a lot of formal methods and proofs, and I'm just curious about the how much of your time is about implementing stuff, and how much of it is thinking through new ways to do things at the theoretical level.
More implementation than thinking through the new things, but I collaborate with some of our research scientists at the foundation and other people about, usually other people are coming up with new ideas and then they're writing it up, and then if you write up a cool cryptographic protocol and no one implements it in software, if a tree falls in the wood and no one hears it, is it worth anything? And the answer is yes, it's worth something, because someone else might look at that later and be like, oh, that's an idea, and actually implement it. But very much I'm leaning into the implementation. I call myself a cryptographic engineer because if I'm not writing code at some point, I feel like I'm not doing much. I feel like I might be busy as hell, but I haven't written any code in a long time, or I haven't done anything with software in a long time. I feel I get antsy. Yeah.
Can I ask you, Deirdre? So when we talk about cryptocurrencies and stuff like that, we all naturally think of Bitcoin, which is obviously just one type of cryptocurrency. I was wondering if you could maybe just give us a very quick primer, not on Bitcoin, but kind of the ways in which Zcash is different than Bitcoin.
Zcash was actually forked from the Bitcoin code base in about 2015. And as I've talked previously about, Bitcoin is not anonymous, and it's not clear if anonymity or privacy was ever a primary objective when they Satoshi Nakamoto or whoever they are were designing it. So what Zcash did is they took the building blocks of Bitcoin, the peer-to-peer networking protocol, so that people can exchange blocks and transactions and stuff like that with each other. Basic mining, all the stuff, like the building blocks of it. And then they defined a new coin called Zcash, based on a paper called Zero Cash, based on a paper called Zero Coin, with zero knowledge proofs on top. And what that does is it's a cryptographic technique that allows you to check all the rules that you check in regular Bitcoin. Like, this is a coin that is real and has been mined before. You're not making money out of thin air. I am allowed to send this coin with my key associated with my wallet. Stuff like that. I'm not spending one that has been spent before. A whole bunch of rules like this. You're able to check that all the rules are correct based on the entire history of the chain, the blockchain, inside a cryptographic proof. And the only information that you learn after validating that proof is that the rules are correct or not. You don't learn who is trying to make a transaction. You don't learn who it's going to, and you don't learn the value that's being exchanged. All you learn, that's the magic sauce of zero knowledge proofs, and generally the magic sauce of Zcash is that zero knowledge proofs prove in zero other knowledge, no other leaking or metadata, that the statement you're trying to prove, that all these rules about this distributed currency ledger have been followed and are working correctly, and therefore you're able to make a transaction without revealing all the other data about who is doing it and how much.
Right. So in Bitcoin, for example, when you look at the ledger, when you look at the blockchain, you can tell which wallets it came from.
Yep.
Right. That you don't know who owns the wallet, but you know the wallet that it came from. Is in Zcash, does that not happen? That is, that you can't tell what wallet it came from?
Everything that's public on the public Zcash blockchain is encrypted for Zcash shielded transactions. It's just ciphertext, as we call it. It's gibberish. The only people who are able to make sense of that gibberish are the person who sent the money with their outgoing viewing key. This is a Zcash specific thing, or the person that's receiving the money with their incoming viewing key. And now we have these things called full viewing keys or whatever. Only the people who are allowed to view that information are able to see that information. And allowed is they have the cryptographic key material that lets them decrypt that information.
And so what is the blockchain recording? If the blockchain is itself in the relevant information is encrypted, is it merely the fact that there was a transaction that was kosher?
Aha. The proof is verifiable by anyone. So the proof is visible to everyone in the world on the blockchain. So when you make a transaction, you create the proof. You prove this statement is true because I know the secret keys and I know the information about the Zcash note and you know all this information. So you really literally create a proof, a blob that's parsable and whatever. That is public. And then anyone, so such as the software that I write, can verify that proof and check that everything that's in that encrypted blob is correct and valid according to the rules of the Zcash blockchain, but it reveals nothing else. That's how everything inside the blob, which is everything that you need to spend that note later, or the information about who is sending it to whom, all of that can stay encrypted because you have published a proof on the blockchain that says, I know you can't see in here, but if you can verify that proof, that means that everything in here checks all the boxes for a valid transaction on the Zcash blockchain.
So, okay, so I'm now, this seems to me like an obvious improvement from a security perspective over Bitcoin.
From a
and
security perspective for the
for
user.
the user.
Yeah.
We're gonna get to the society
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
stuff in a minute.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like anticipating Nick yelling at me in the chat. So.
But right now, the price of Zcash is $150.33 a token, and the price of a Bitcoin is $35,876 per Bitcoin. So my question is, given the technological superiority that you've just described, why is there an order of magnitude price distinction in the wrong direction vis-a-vis the technology?
I'll give you my perspective. One, Bitcoin was first. Just Bitcoin is the one that influences basically every other cryptocurrency, either in like in a pro way, like Bitcoin, or we're not going to do it like Bitcoin. We're going to go a different way. All the way down to the software, how you implement a blockchain-based cryptocurrency. Bitcoin was first. Two, Zcash. Zcash has a couple of things about it that were kind of like pros and cons for getting it off the ground in about 2016. One, or rather two things. There are two kinds of Zcash transactions. There's the shielded one, which I was describing, and now we're going to be on our third iteration of shielded because we upgrade the cryptography, and I'll explain more about it in a minute. There's also transparent. Transparent is functionally equivalent to regular Bitcoin transactions. This was because the very first version of the shielded Zcash transactions were using a proof type called BCTB14. It was as good as we could do at the time to get a small enough zero-knowledge proof to fit on the blockchain in a transaction. And it was as fast as we could at the time. It was still too slow. It took multiple seconds, more than 30 seconds to create a proof. And therefore you couldn't do it on your phone. You couldn't do it. It was a lot of work to send a shielded transaction. So transparent transactions were released at the start to bootstrap people to use it at all. In 2018, 19, I forget what year it is. There's no such thing as pandemic time. Then the second version of Shielded came out, much faster, smaller proofs. You can send shielded transactions from your phone. It is pretty fast if your phone supports it. We have SDKs from the electric coin company to just build into your mobile app to help you do this. Unfortunately, in the year of our Lord 2021, the majority of Zcash transactions are still transparent. The minority are shielded of one flavor or another. I think it's about 70% are transparent. And while those of us who love Zcash because of shielded want transparent to be the minimum, if not to go away completely, moving it between currencies can be hard. Getting exchanges where you exchange US dollars or the fiat currency for cryptocurrency, getting them to adopt a newfangled zero knowledge proof, like, you don't just need to issue a signature like you do for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is kind of simple in its cryptography. You have hashing for everything on the blockchain, you have hashing for mining, and you issue and validate signatures. And the signatures are real simple elliptic curve signatures with a very well fine-tuned elliptic curve that everyone knows and everyone uses. If you want exchanges to adopt whiz-bang zero-knowledge proofs and special signatures and special hashes and special this and special that, even though it's like the best, they have to know what's in it for them. It's a lot of investment for, you're only worth $150 a coin? How much usage do you have? That's not so great compared to Bitcoin. So it's kind of a bootstrapping problem on multiple levels.
And a first factor problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also I also think of most of the people that are and you can tell me if this is wrong. Most of the people that are working at these e-coin places or blockchain currency companies are not people that are used to brokering with foreign currency exchanges in order to convince them, or like to talking sense into them about like the value of, or explaining blockchain in particular. So like, does your company have people that do that kind of policy side thing as well as people that do kind of the stuff that you're doing?
The foundation has fewer resources in that regard versus the electric coin company, formerly known as the Zcash company. They were the ones who got Zcash off the ground in 2015. They have resources to work with regulators. They have been working on policy, stuff like that, for years. So, the foundation and Zcash would not be kind of on the good footing that we are without them. They've been helping in that regard.
Can we talk about getting it off the ground? Because I remember, I thought Cash Hill wrote it, but I cannot find it for the love of God. Like, I'm just like Googling like crazy. Somebody wrote a great story about basically a couple of people who as a reporter, they followed through the process of renting motels with cash and like going into and having air-gapped computers and starting their own blockchain, and like how it was that like kind of came about. And so do you know any, I've never obviously experienced it. I only have this one journalism article that I thought was quite excellent and fascinating. Yeah. But hold on, what did you say? Radio lab. Oh, it was a radio lab.
Yes.
Sorry. Never mind. Sorry.
I remember listening to this.
Thanks, John.
I forget if it was the very first shielded or the second one. I think it was the very first one. So the first two generations of shielded Zcash transactions to make these zero knowledge proofs work is ZK Starks, which are based on a kind of cryptography called pairings, which is related to elliptic curves, but these are just gobbledygook. Don't worry about it. To set things up so that you can publish the information you need in public to start making these proofs and verifying them, you need to do something called trusted setup, which is basically you need to generate the parameters so that when you publish the public part of the parameters, people can be like, cool, I am verifying a proof that is based on this starting block. Like if you start on a map, if you give people directions and you say follow the directions, but you don't give them a starting point, they're going to end up somewhere else. You need a starting point. That's kind of what the public parameters are about. For these proofs, what happens is you need a pair. You need a key pair, a secret and a public. The public is what everyone is going to see. The secret is considered toxic waste. It's considered if people have access to the secret value that you don't need anymore, you could mint money. You could do proofs in a certain way that would let you do scary things with these zero knowledge proofs, checking all the things about Zcash. So the trusted setup part is getting randomness and contributions to this multi-party setup in a secure way. So that includes people like being off the grid and driving through Canada with just a radio to transmit the randomly generated data on their computer and their contribution to this multi-party protocol to the group without anyone, with all the plausible deniability of no one is feeding me secret signals. No one knows that I walked into a Best Buy and bought this laptop with cash. There's no implant on this computer from the NSA or whomever, even if the NSA knew what Zcash was at the time. All of that is basically like trying to cover all of your bases for generating these parameters in as secure a manner as you can, knowing that, Nick says it's a bit of security theater. It's a cool story.
It is some security theater, but I do specifically remember in that Radiolab episode, there's like a moment in which like the computer has somehow, even though it was air gapped for all of these different reasons, that there has somehow somebody's phone was on, and somehow like there was some type of taint, and like I do remember it kind of like it feeling like wow. I don't know. It is security theater, though. I agree with Nick.
It is a very cool story, and it's a very cypherpunk kind of start to a very kind of
Neil
cypherpunk.
Stephenson.
Very. I will say that this is this is kind of a constraint to the cryptography that was cutting edge at the time, and due in a large part to the interest in cryptocurrencies, period, and money being invested into research for cryptography, in part to solve problems that arose because of cryptocurrency. Proofs have been driven radically forward in a very short amount of time. So the newest version of Zcash, shielded Zcash, no longer needs this whiz bangs, like driving through the desert with an air-gapped computer setup anymore, because new proofs, it's specific for the details. The old one, the sapling one, was called Grot 16. The new one is called Halo 2. It blah, 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 blah. It's very cool. I can give links to the new cryptography if you want it. But one reason why we moved in this direction is because this sort of trusted setup thing had a lot of like the security theater and cool story to one person is like, oh, that's really cool. And you really like, pulled out all the stops to make sure this was a secure setup. And other people are like, well, there's another coin over there that says it's private and they didn't have to worry about any of this at all. So some people are like, well, why should I use you when I could use them? And I don't have to worry about any of this at all. And it's like, oh, okay. But now with the latest thing, we don't have to worry about it all either.
Deirdre, why do people use Zcash for non-shielded transactions?
Yeah, good question.
Because they go to an exchange and it says they support Zcash and they buy it and they don't know the difference.
Okay.
I have a feeling that is probably why more often than not.
Interesting.
But more broadly, what do you understand as, it seems to me, there are two very clear in real life use cases for digital currency. One is speculation, and the other is ransomware.
Or you're living in a regime where getting money in and out is very hard.
And so that has been one of the hypothesized uses for a long time. Do we know that substantial numbers of people are actually using it for that?
Cryptocurrency, at least for Venezuela, there was a lot of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was a little bit something when there was several cryptocurrency conferences happening around when Venezuela was falling apart under Maduro. And people were like, oh, we are doing, research studies and sociology studies about how we can help people get their money out of Venezuela. And I was like, this is good. This is actually like us trying to provide a tool and a service for people. But at the same time, it was like, let's make sure that we're not trying to find an application for our tool that we're just sort of grasping for.
But it does seem like, I think cryptocurrencies are super cool. I used to own some. I don't anymore. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's really cool. It does seem to me like an application in search of use cases, and a lot of the use cases that are actually driving the value of them are quite disreputable, specifically ransomware, other criminal activity, and money laundering, right? And so I wonder, like, other than like working on really cool crypto, how do you understand what the service that you're providing to the world is?
Can I tag on to Ben's question really quickly, which is just that I also think that you're underselling the value of having autocratic or really damaging government. Like, I mean, even the United States, like the amount of money that they seize around possible illegal or like activity through forfeiture is immense. And a lot, if there are like legitimate reasons to think that maybe we think the United States has a legitimate reason to seize all of this money every time without giving reasons or whatever else in a forfeiture claim because people are like can't prove where the money came from. But also, there are plenty of places in the world that don't have any types of laws like that even would imagine that you could pay you could keep the government from just randomly seizing your money. So it makes sense to try to keep your money out of the hands of like the government. I know that is like the most kind of anarchist thing that I will ever say, but there is like but I think that it's very true, and I think that we very much forget it because we live in a world in which like we're like, oh, it's like so nice for us, but anyway.
I definitely kind of lump Zcash in its application with a service like Tor or a protocol like Tor, which is, yes, it's been lumped in with bad actors doing bad things on the dark web, but it's mostly the Tor project and the Tor protocol is not performant enough to do bad things at scale, but it is exactly performant enough to help journalists, activists in areas of the world where they either get shut down, visa payments get cut off to them, fundraising gets cut off to them, and they're trying to, I don't know, like stand up for democracy in Hong Kong, something like that. I don't know if activists in Hong Kong have been using Zcash, but that's kind of where I lump it in, which is that it is more niche than a broader tool, just like Tor is more niche than a broader security tool like, say, Signal. But it definitely has its uses.
I would also say like it's more niche, and maybe and then I'll shut up, but it's more niche, and it might be niche now, but it might be essential for anyone of like the fact that like something like that exists even on the margins creates like a way, like prevents the Overton window from moving all the way prevents the Overton window moving from all the way into the world in which the government knows all of your financial transactions and controls all of like your speech, period. Sorry,
I would just say one thing it never comes up in these discussions, and I find it incomprehensible that one of the greatest powers that the state has is the control over the money supply. And that's almost like one of the most, that is just an incredible power that the government has. And so I find it hard to believe that they will cede that power. They will give up that power. Now, people said that about the internet, and yet we have it. But the idea that now, if in fact, digital currencies become really widespread, then, will it matter who the Fed chairman is? I don't know. I find it, when you think historically, the idea that the king, the emperor can debase the currency, the gold standard, all this stuff, that will go away if cryptocurrencies are adopted in a widespread fashion. That strikes me as almost incomprehensible.
Render to Caesar that which is Caesar's.
Exactly.
We're going to render to Ray Bond that which is due to Ray Bond. So Ray, the floor is yours.
All right. So the first question I had, it's sort of a personal finance or advice question. So I've rephrased it in terms that a cryptographer could understand. So Alice marries Bob. Bob buys about $1,500 of a joke currency called Dogecoin. Dogecoin skyrockets, and Alice and Bob have like $1.6 million at some point in time. Now they have about $800,000 worth of Dogecoin. So Alice's sister's brother-in-law, Ray, thinks that Bob is fucking nuts for not selling his Dogecoin and getting out of it. What does Deirdre think?
Sell.
I think you're supposed to say asking for a friend.
No.
I thought you
yeah,
were gonna,
yeah, yeah.
and I was gonna say it depends on whether you're in a community property state. Sorry.
I don't. I pay much more attention to the cryptography side of crypto than the market side, but still, like one of the, I think I talked about this on an earlier episode, but like nothing changed with Dogecoin. It was just a meme. Nothing changed about the software, the protocol, the name, the dog. Nothing changed. Just people started being like, "LOL, Dogecoin," and then it went beep, and then it dropped down a little bit. Like, it's just it's just hype. So like, sell while the selling's good. Like I've been vaguely keeping an eye. I bought like $100 of Dogecoin or something like that when it was too high. So I lost some money on Dogecoin just for fun, and nothing to sell.
What's your second question, Ray?
Yeah, so my second question is sort of related, which is how do you identify what a fair price for a given cryptocurrency is? So is there an intrinsic value linked to the cost of mining a coin, which justifies why one is more expensive than another? Or is it purely market demand and speculation?
At least with Bitcoin and Bitcoin-derived currencies, they're inherently deflationary. There will eventually be a fixed cap of how many Bitcoin will exist in the world or have been mined. There's definitely been a
22 million, right?
It's either 22
21.
or 14. 21? Okay.
For Bitcoin? Yeah, 21.
For Bitcoin.
21.
Oh,
Yeah,
and
21.
like asterisk, it's always possible that someone changes the software and just completely changes their minds at some point. And as long as like the majority, the 51% of the network decides that, yep, like there could be infinite Bitcoin, like that may change. But it has been since the start a capped, inherently deflationary currency. Other coins, other tokens are not exactly the same, but a lot of them are just forks of Bitcoin in one way or another, and they have something similar. So in terms of inherent value, there's enough built-in scarcity to affect that to a point. But why Bitcoin is $30,000 a coin and why Dogecoin is 70 cents a coin or whatever it's at now, 40 cents US dollar. I don't know.
They have no inherent value.
Yeah, like why is gold worth what it is versus a rock in my yard? And I know there's like it's very a good conductor and it's got all these like material properties that are, but like that's not why
but
gold
those are not
is
what. That's
worth.
not why. Because
That's
it was
not why
worth a lot-
gold-
It was worth a lot before that. Gold is
Yeah.
worth a lot because it's scarce. Relative.
This is why the
relatively
diamond market is so fucked up.
Right. Well, the
Scarcity.
diamond market is largely
Falsely
fraudulent
scarce.
in a
Yes,
way
it's
that-
like falsely scarce. Right.
Gold is not an especially useful metal. It's valuable because it's scarce, and we historically attribute value to it.
Just like the oldest cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, it's historically been the most valuable one.
It's almost like if people just believe in it, it happens. Like the government, or like I've been saying
but-
this
but-
about the oversight board. Like it's just a thing until it's not a thing anymore.
I will just say one thing that another thing I think that people are leaving out here, which is that money, currency that is non-digital currency, is legal tender, which means that your creditor has no choice but to accept cash to extinguish the debt, but they don't have to accept Bitcoin or Zcash or anything like that. And that means that money, real money, is backed by the coercive power, backed by the state. And it may be immaterial at some point if there's a free convertibility between digital currencies and cash. But
I just want to say I tried this once to see if the legal tender thing was enforceable, and it's not. I had $100 fine to pay, and I decided to pay it in pennies because I did not respect the authority of the entity that issued the fine. So I showed up and tried to pay it in pennies, and they refused to accept it. And this was a government office.
They're not allowed to do that.
So it was.
They can't do that. They
They
can't
can't
fucking
do
do
that,
that.
but they did. And they were the sovereign entity. I wasn't. It's
almost like
there
there's
with
no
big bags
process.
of pennies.
If you have the power. Like, whatever. Sorry, I'm getting very, like, legal realist about everything all of a sudden.
Meanwhile, Daniel is wearing the wrong colored shirt today.
I think he looks great. You look great.
He
Daniel.
does look great.
Don't
but
listen
it's-
to anything.
He's got the
says.
blue on black thing, except I know the background's really green. It's just very disorienting to see Daniel dressed like this. But the floor is yours for a very brief question, which is what you always deliver.
I'm not sure what level of generality to pitch my question, so answer it in any level of generality you wish. How do you think if governments start cracking down on carbon emissions, how will that affect the future of Bitcoin?
Which governments?
Say the United States, or just in
EU.
general, how will, if the world gets serious
China.
about cracking down on carbon emissions, how is that going to affect the future of cryptocurrencies, and can they adapt?
In the short term, they literally will just put the mining farms right next to the hydroelectric dam, the wind farm, the solar array. They're already doing that, especially in China and Europe and in Texas, I think.
Yeah.
They're already doing that. Mostly because they're like, there are some power utilities who are like, oh, if you want, we will give you a specific rate, like a bulk rate. I don't know if it's a bulk rate or an extra fee. If you put your server farm at our facility, and like we will like give you the hookup, because they're desperate and they want, like, there's a lot of cryptocurrency people who they don't feel great about literally sucking down like the energy usage of a whole other country, just trying to secure the network with proof of work mining. So in the short term, they will literally just try to move to carbon neutral or renewable energy. Sorry, Nick, like they're literally putting farms in China right next to hydroelectric dams. Like, that is part of what they're doing. The second thing is there are a lot of cryptocurrencies that are already like the way we do block token mining, how we quote secure the network by basically determining which fork will follow the chain for consensus. There are other algorithms for determining consensus besides proof of work mining. Proof of work mining is just literally you're hashing something over and over and over again, and you're rolling a dice over and over and over again, like millions and millions and millions of times a second, trying to get the lucky number. And you're competing with everyone else that's mining on the network that's seen this block to try to get the lucky number so that you get the mining reward. And you don't have to do that. It's just a very simple way to kind of get agreement. There are other ways to get that kind of agreement to secure the network and verify consensus. Ethereum, which is basically the number 2 cryptocurrency that has all these smart contracts and gives us things like NFTs, has been talking about moving away from proof of work to proof of stake for a long time, and they're supposed to be deploying it very soon, any day now. And a lot of people, including Zcash, are watching how that goes. If that goes well, because Zcash uses proof of work, because it's a fork of Bitcoin from 2015. We've done everything else on top of it. We still have a lot of Bitcoin and stuff in Zcash. If proof of stake goes well for Ethereum, a lot of coins and a lot of cryptocurrencies will be like, okay, if they can do it, maybe we can do it. And that'll get all of the carbon stuff and the environment stuff and the energy usage stuff off our backs. And it will make miners have less power in the network. But then you swap that out for staking, which is a whole other thing to deal with.
All right, so Susan Brewer wants to backtrack a little bit.
Yeah. Hey, everyone, and Deirdre. So this is kind of a right turn, but when would you've reached out in your mind to places that a lot of people don't go and gotten there ahead of a lot of people. So I'm going to ask you to guess when we might expect quantum computing to hit the ground.
Ooh.
And who's doing ahead of this? I mean, is China playing this ball better than everybody else, or what's the deal?
Unclear if China is leading. I think companies like IBM, Google, Amazon Web Services also have a quantum computing lab going. There are others in the United States. I think they're in the lead. And other research labs at universities and stuff like that. But China's no slouch. I just have less hard data about results that have been coming out of China. It's a bit tough because quantum, like a real quantum computer, at least, and the ones that cryptographers care about in terms of a quantum adversary, with a sufficiently large and sufficiently efficient quantum computer to run the algorithms that we're afraid of that will break all of our cryptography that's deployed, has been 20 years away for 20 years. But the latest results are promising in that one of the big things we have to overcome is error correction. Basically,
promising in the sense of promising from a development of the adversary quantum computing point of view, or promising from the they can't do it, we're safe point of view.
So this is, it's almost like a dilemma in my heart, which is that I would love to see quantum computers succeed. It's fascinating. It's like pure research. It has so many applications like protein folding or simulations or whatever. It's very cool and we should pursue it. But also, I don't want all the cryptography to break. Like that would be annoying. But that's also why, like, if we have all these quantum secure algorithms ready to go, hopefully before the quantum computer, the large one, owned and operated by the NSA or the People's Army in China, comes online, we'll be ready for it. So like, I want to see both things succeed. There was a result by Google maybe over a year ago now because pandemic, where they had a 50 plus physical qubit computer. A qubit is a quantum bit, just like a transistor in a classical computer. We measure things in quantum bits that demonstrated quantum supremacy. They demonstrated quantum supremacy over a very large classical supercomputer. Except they kind of did it in a way that's like, we're doing it on a problem that that is only applicable to quantum computers, sort of deal. And so it's a little bit like, okay, you did the thing, but it's definitely not one of the things that we're worried about you doing yet. So maybe when you're factoring RSA, when you're factoring large numbers, we will care more. It's moving forward. It's promisingly moving forward in terms of having a large, useful quantum computer. I would say in 5 years, I'll just be like, where are we really? And I'll probably be like, okay, if we're not already like ready to deploy some stuff in 5 years, I'd be worried. I think 10 years will be like, all right, which of the 3-letter agencies has one of these? But modulo quantum error correction, modulo cold, like cryogenics, modulo, it's all just an engineering problem.
Yeah, so can I'm sorry, did you want to say something, Kate?
No.
No, oh, okay. I was just saying, we're ignoring the elephant in the room here, which is, why are all the crypto people so weird? I can't fucking, I swear, I can't stand it. So, like you go to these hacking conferences, and if somebody, there are 10,000 people in the room, and if the speaker or some questioner says anything like blockcoin, Bitcoin, or the whole, like 10,000 people groan. It can't, nobody can stand the crypto people. Now, what's the deal? What?
Depends on the room, and are you talking about cryptographers or cryptocurrency?
No, not cryptographers, like the general security community.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and just normal people. That is, like, you seem not only delightful but also normal. Which it's a low bar, but the crypto people are just insufferable. What's the deal with that?
I'm gonna relabel security people, like infosec, information security people, maybe.
Yeah. Call it infosec, sure.
I would say, one, I have focused a lot on, at least since I got into cryptography, on focusing on like, I learned this cool thing, I need to be able to communicate this cool thing, or else it's just me in a corner just learning something cool and like what the hell, who cares? So that's just me. Another thing is, there's definitely been a long culture in sort of information security of sort of elite hacker going in the dark corner and either hacking into things or finding a vulnerability and proving it and showing how awesome you are and how dumb other people are. And I will say that the field has been predominantly white dudes, with a minority of non-white dudes, non-dude people for a while, and that is changing, thankfully. And I think because it's been a little bit of a dark art for so long, that attitude has been able to stick around because these people have knowledge and skills that people need, other people don't understand, and they need them. They need them to secure their software because software is eating the world, to secure their systems. They need them, they will pay them money to find vulnerabilities and these other things or whatever. And they've been able to get away with this sort of like dark arts attitude for a long time. And now I think it's starting to change a little bit. For example, these hacking conferences like DEF CON. I love DEF CON because that's where I started to be able to present about cryptography at the Crypto and Privacy Village, which has a dear place in my heart. It used to have a bit of a more toxic vibe and reputation, and that has changed a lot in the past, I don't know, since it started before I started going, and it has been improving. And I don't have anything particular to attribute that to, other than I think more, a little bit of Gamergate.
I was gonna say that too, Ben. Thank you.
I think more people are interested because like everyone's like, we need more security people. We need people. There's like a dearth of infosec people to fill jobs in the United States, and so more people are interested because there's a lot of people outside of the stereotype. They're interested in like finding vulnerabilities and like cracking systems or securing systems because they're like, that's broken, that's a bad idea, let's fix that. And so they're sort of like, well, I would be more interested in being part of the community if it weren't kind of mean.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Can I say something? It's incredibly anecdotal, but like it's just kind of like the idea that a lot of the people in any type of like smallish niche community in which you can guard information, and your guarded information and the people that are guarding that information are people who have been ostracized, shamed, or bullied, teased by other people for so much of their lives, are going to also become it's not no fault of their own. It's kind of like a very natural impulse to kind of become like the natural bullies and naysayers themselves, and to guard that special spot. And they're like, oh, we got it right, now you want in. Well, fuck you, you're not, we've got this thing. I think that what Deirdre is kind of talking about, and what we've talked about today, and like Ben just mentioned with Gamergate, was that a lot of people did not realize they were complicit in that type of guarding, and now they don't want to be the guards anymore of that type of that type of toxicity. Like they recognize that a lot of the people that created that knowledge and guarded it were broken and like damaged, and they don't want to like be a part of like that kind of like continuing to put it forward. And so it's like opened up. But I was teased and bullied a lot. I get the impulse like to do that type of thing, but that's very much what it strikes me as, like just from a layman's perspective.
I do think the infosec crypto world has to go back to Scott's original point, I mean, it has an unusual number of prominent people who've had sexual assault allegations against them. It has I mean, the toxicity is kind of next level.
I mean, it's like they're abused people who become abusers. Like, I think that that's like a very real.
Yeah, it's like the Stanford prison experiment type thing.
Yeah, no, it
to-
totally is. It's completely the same. No, it absolutely is.
I'll speak to that point that Ben brought up, is that one of the real tough parts about if you have an abusive person in the security infosec community or the privacy community is you have some more paranoid than average people in your community by default, because you're aware of how broken things are and how leaky things are. And so your personal OPSEC and your sort of like how you move through the community is a little bit different. And if you have a person in your community that knows how to preserve their OPSEC and preserve their privacy very well, it can be very hard for them to find out that they are hurting people in your community. And that has happened more than once. And I don't really have anything good to say about that other than it's hard, and just talk to your friends and be there for them. And yeah.
I'm glad to have you in the space, Deirdre. I'm glad to learn from you. This was so great.
We are going to leave it there. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
A real pleasure. We will be back tomorrow, guys, but I don't know who the guest is going to be. And
Oh, shit. Is it Naomi Wolf?
No, she's
not.
no.
Glad
Yesterday she was banned for 2 years.
Yes, we were. That's why was why Kate was making the joke. But we will be back tomorrow. I may not be here because I have a scheduling conflict with the show. So
Oh my gosh, it's gonna be
we're gonna have to talk about this and figure it all out.
That's fun.
But anyway, something will happen 22 hours and 57 minutes from now. And until then, Scott?
We can't have fun anymore, but you know what we can have? We can have like super delightful new blood, really smart blood in this field.
And cheese night on Friday.
Oh my God, cheese night.
We will see you tomorrow, people.